Israel just killed 50 Iranian leaders in a single strike. They were hiding in a bunker that was directly under the compound where Khamenei died. Their thinking was simple. They believed that no one would expect them to return to where the war started. Unfortunately, they were wrong, and they paid dearly for that mistake. 50 officials dead in 50 seconds. Here's the clip of the strike that the Israeli Air Force released. Now, it's important to point out that during the early hours of the operation, the Israelis only struck the top of the compound because Khamenei didn't believe that there was a war coming, so he didn't go to his bunker. So, Khamenei died before he even had a chance to use the bunker, and that's why these leaders assumed that bunker was still safe. Unfortunately, this morning, 50 Israeli Air Force jets dropped approximately 100 bombs on the site, and the bunker was destroyed. But you see, there's more to this story than just this bunker. Israel actually knew everything about this plan, and they knew everything that was going on inside the bunker. Take a look at this 3D rendering that Israeli forces released after the strike. The underground bunker was actually larger than the compound above it. It spread across multiple streets in central Tehran, and it had multiple entry points and multiple meeting rooms for senior officials. And Israel knew all of this. They knew how deep it was, they knew how wide it was, and they knew every room that was located inside. In fact, if you look closely at this clip that's on your screen, you see that Israel even knew the posters that Iran had hung on the bunker walls. That's some scary intelligence. And to make matters worse, this is a pattern we have seen throughout this war. Iranian leaders are too scared to communicate digitally because they know Israeli hackers are everywhere. So they keep meeting in person. But every time they gather to meet, Israel strikes the moment the meeting starts. The Turkish foreign minister said it perfectly. Iran likes to talk a big game, but they don't have the capabilities to back it up. All their secrets are just right there in the open for Israel to exploit. And it gets worse. This morning, Israeli forces shared how they fooled Iranian intelligence during the initial strike, the one that killed Khamenei. You see, Israeli intelligence doesn't just know what Iranian leadership is doing, they also know how Iranian intelligence operates. They also know what Iranian intelligence looks at inside Israel, and they use that information to basically fool this Iranian intelligence into a false sense of security. Here's more details.
So Fox News is getting some new exclusive information about the strikes overnight and about this specific bunker. A senior Israeli official telling Fox News that at the time of the strike, when Operation Epic Fury began, when the Ayatollah Khamenei was actually killed, he was above ground. He did not go into this bunker. And that is why the Israelis were able to kill him, in part because he didn't think that he was going to be targeted. And there was a deception campaign, I am told by a senior Israeli official, to make the Iranians think that this attack wasn't even going to begin. Despite the fact that there were planes in the air, the inner circle of the Ayatollah didn't think to get him underground. And part of this deception campaign was coordinated directly at the highest levels between the Americans and the Israelis, I'm told. One official says that the top commanders here in Israel that normally would be at the Kiryat, Israel's version of the Pentagon, went home for Shabbat dinner with their families. And there were a number of posts that were made and statements by President Trump in the 24 hours leading up to the beginning of this operation. All of this meant to deceive Iranian leadership. And this official says the result was exactly what planners had hoped for. Khamenei stayed above ground, and the opening strike of Operation Epic Fury found him right there.
The false sense of security basically had Iran believing that there wasn't a war coming. And this is exactly why Khamenei was above the ground when the bombs hit. I hope I'm making the point I'm trying to make clear. Like, it's not the fact that Iranians didn't know a strike was coming. In fact, Iranians very confidently believed that a strike was not coming because they believed that they were watching all the Israeli officers and they were like, hey, if they're not in their Pentagon, that means there's no major operation coming. Now, these kind of mistakes have long-term consequences. And one of those consequences we're seeing play out right now. Iranian regime is having a hard time trying to fill the job vacancy that they have for the supreme leader. 2 clerics have already been offered this job, but both of them refused because they know what comes next. Everyone in Iran knows what comes next. The moment you become the supreme leader, you become target number 1. And Israel has the most powerful intelligence inside Iran, and they can turn that intelligence into a death sentence for whoever who wants to accept this position. In fact, just this morning, other than the bunker strike, we also know that Israel carried out 3 different strikes, targeted assassinations against 3 different Iranian officials who were in their homes. Before we get into details of all this, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and like button down below, because whenever we talk about strikes and assassinations, YouTube's ad algorithm has like a heart attack and restricts our videos. So your support really does help us out fighting back against this algorithm and to reach more people. Now let's get into what happened. First, we had Asghar Mir Hijazi. He was Khamenei's intelligence and security advisor. He was one of the most powerful actors inside Iran. In fact, according to the US government, he was the working brains behind all the important events that we saw. Well, I'm guessing as of this morning, that brain is no longer working. The second guy was Hossein Taib, the former head of IRGC intelligence. Reports say that his house was struck this morning. Now, the Israeli media is saying that he was in the house and he's no more. But the Iranian media claims that he wasn't home and that means he's alive. But important to point out here is that it's the same Iranian media that said Khamenei wasn't at his compound, and we know how that turned out. So important to keep that in mind. Of course, we don't have all the information, but I'm sharing everything I have. And then we have the guy who ordered the hit on President Trump during the 2024 election season. Here's Secretary of War Pete Hegseth sharing the details as to what happened to him. Take a listen.
Yesterday, the leader of the unit who attempted to assassinate President Trump has been hunted down and killed. Iran tried to kill President Trump, and President Trump got the last laugh.
I was the hunted, and now I'm the hunter.
At that same press conference, we had Central Comm Commander Admiral Brad Cooper outlining what comes next, meaning what is phase 2 for this war. First step was to try to destroy the air defenses Iran has and destroy the ballistic missile capabilities they have. Next step is to go after the producers, meaning the factories that are producing these ballistic missiles. And not just those factories, go after the whole industrial base, meaning a factory that's producing a small part for a ballistic missile, that needs to be destroyed. Even a factory that's creating just some kind of small equipment that goes into a ballistic missile, that needs to go too. The whole industrial base needs to go. Here's that statement.
The president gave us another task, to raise or level Iran's ballistic missile industrial base. So we're not just hitting what they have, we're destroying their ability to rebuild. And so as we transition to the next phase of this operation, we will systemically dismantle Iran's missile production capability for the future, and that's absolutely in progress. This is going to take some time, but our forces are well supplied, as the Secretary said, and we are absolutely ready to prosecute this mission decisively. Our combined joint forces have relentlessly destroyed Iran's air defenses over the past few days, and they've continued hunting for more systems to kill. Our air defenders are operating at the very top of their game. I couldn't be prouder, shoulder to shoulder with our partners in the region, in many cases, providing the most integrated air defense network in Middle East history. We are fighting to win.
Then Admiral Cooper also gave us an update on what happened, what has US military achieved in the first 4 days of the war, especially focusing on the last 24 hours from the point when the press conference was given, which was yesterday US time. So take a listen.
Then if I just look back over the last 24 hours of the operation compared to where we were at start, ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90% since day one. Drone attacks have decreased by 83% since day one. Having said this, we remain vigilant. Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships. And in just the last few hours, we hit an Iranian drone carrier ship, roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. And as we speak, it's on fire.
On top of this, we also had Central Command release new footage showing American forces destroying the Iranian drone carrier. Now this is where I do want to issue a correction. Earlier I reported that this carrier had been sunk by the US Navy. Unfortunately, that was incorrect. US Navy did strike this carrier earlier, but at that point it was only damaged, not sinking the whole ship. Now we have video proof that it has been sunk, so it's confirmed now. Just a little background on this vessel. It was a commercial ship that Iran converted into a mobile drone platform, something that they bragged about constantly. And now it's just one of 30 Iranian ships that's sitting at the bottom of the ocean. Now, right after this, Secretary Hegseth also confirmed that the intensity is gonna go up even more. And the reason for that is pretty simple. US and Israel are getting pretty close to achieving basically total air dominance over Iranian skies. And that means US is flying in more tactical aviation to support the next step of the plan. The next step is basically to go after the missile launchers as much as possible and go after the missile factories. And in that, the tactical aviation that's probably going to fly in is fighter jets, right? More F-35s, more F-16s, anything else that can go inside Iran and basically destroy a missile launcher as soon as one is spotted. He also sent a message to the Iranian leadership. Basically, we have seen a lot of Iranian officials go on state TV and even go on US news channels over here and basically say that they can outlast US in this war. If this is a war of attrition, Iran has more than enough people. They will just keep replacing anyone US and Israel assassinate. And on top of that, Iran has missiles and capability to produce more missiles that they will just keep firing more and more. They basically have more political will to continue this war than US. That's the argument Iran is trying to make, at least publicly. Well, here's Secretary Hegseth replying to that argument. Take a listen.
A few thoughts before I hand it over to the Admiral for an update. Iran is hoping that we cannot sustain this, which is a really bad miscalculation for the IRGC in Iran. You see, there's no shortage of American will here. We remember and honor our fallen, those 6 that we will soon welcome at Dover, who gave everything for their country in this mission. We remember them. But we remember them by rededicating ourselves even more fervently to this mission. Our commitment to our mission objectives only increases as our advantages continue to increase. We've got no shortage of munitions. Our stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to. Again, our munition status only increases as our advantage increases. Our capabilities, we have only just begun to fight and fight decisively. Having a chance to hear from Admiral Cooper. If you think you've seen something, just wait. The amount of combat power that's still flowing, that's still coming, that we'll be able to project over Iran is a multiples of what it currently is right now when you add up our capabilities and those of the Israeli Defense Forces. And we have no shortage of authorities.
Now, this statement was probably a setup for what President Trump said next. He called on Iranian diplomats around the world to defect and request asylum, give up their post, and work with the US to push the regime change, or push a regime change or a leadership change. Now, this isn't as realistic as it sounds. During the January protests, we saw 2 Iranian diplomats at European embassy defect to Switzerland. They requested asylum rather than return to Iran, probably because they believed that the regime would not survive. That means it's entirely possible that there are diplomats right now working for the regime who may be thinking the same thing, especially since the US has started its operation. That's why President Trump is putting out this message.
Amazing. And I'm once again calling on all members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the military and the police to lay down their arms. They're only going to be killed. And now is the time to stand up for the Iranian people and help take back your country. You're going to have a chance after all these years to take back your country. Accept immunity. We'll give you immunity. And we'll be giving you really the right side of history, because that's what it is. So you'll be perfectly safe with total immunity, or you'll face absolutely guaranteed death. And I don't want to see that. They don't want to see it either. We also urge Iranian diplomats around the world to request asylum and to help us shape a new and better Iran with great potential. It's a country with great potential. It's a much better future for Iran. It's now beginning. It's going to be, I think, a great future. And The United States will ensure that whoever leads the country next, Iran, will not threaten America or its neighbors, Israel, anybody. If you look at what happened, they had missiles aimed at all of these other countries, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, many others, that weren't really involved very much, and they had missiles aimed. Well, they were aimed there long before this ever started. They were going after the entire Middle East. And then we came along. We blew up their party.
And this brings us to the fundamental reason this war, or I guess this operation, is happening. For 30 years, 5 different US presidents from both parties have maintained one red line. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Now, again, I know some pro-Iranian people are going to say. Iran publicly says that they're not pursuing nuclear weapons. But look at their actions. They have enriched uranium to 60%. There is no civilian reason as to why they need to do that. Countries without enrichment capabilities still have nuclear power plants. They just buy enriched uranium. Only reason Iran has 60% uranium is because they want nuclear weapons. So even though they say one thing, their actions are saying something entirely different.
I am formally announcing my intention to cut off all trade and investment with Iran.
Our second goal is to prevent regimes that sponsor terror from threatening America or our friends and allies with weapons of mass destruction. Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror, while an unelected few repress the Iranian people's hope for freedom.
I strongly believe that our national security interest now depends upon preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
What I can say to you, Iran will never get a nuclear weapon on my watch, as they say.
This terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again. They can never have a nuclear weapon.
And then there's this from Steve Witkoff, who was part of the negotiating team that was talking to Iranian delegation before the war. And he mentions that in their opening negotiations, Iran made it crystal clear that they have the ability to make nukes and they've been working towards it all this time. So they want to negotiate from a point of view that they already have nukes. Take a listen.
90% materials, Sean, can be brought to 90%. That's weapons grade, in roughly 1 week, maybe 10 days at the outside. The 20% can be brought to weapons grade inside of 3 to 4 weeks. And let me say this, because I forgot this small little detail. In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs.
This is exactly why Iran cannot have enrichment capabilities, because they have shown time and time again that they're willing to lie to the entire world. They're willing to pursue nukes, all the while claiming that, hey, they have no intentions of building a nuclear weapon.